Hello everybody. So today I have to talk about guidance from MetaPlanet. What an amazing guidance. They are trying to acquire, hopefully by the end of 2027, the staggering amount of 210,000 Bitcoin. Keep in mind, they only have 8,888 right now. And they dropped a 50-page presentation on how they're going to do this. So there's lots of contents. This video is gonna be mostly a commentary on the slides, and then I'll give you my kind of back of a napkin math as to how many X's that could be in 2.5 years, in 2.5 years from now. Anyways, this is a presentation. They dropped the 25 to 27 Bitcoin plan. Keep in mind, end of 2027, that's only 2.5 years away. The Bitcoin is up on the day, of course, but you know it would be easy to not mention that plus 27% today. In my view, some of it probably has to do with that bold target of 210,000 Bitcoin by 2027. As you know, I've boarded that roller coaster in the $4. I wanted to board in the twos, but time of the transfer took too long. So anyways, so I boarded that spaceship, I should say. And of course, the marketing, right? These companies tend to be very good at making presentations because in the world of crypto, which, you know, Bitcoin is firmly in the world of crypto, and these companies are in the world of TradFi. They have one leg in TradFi, one leg in crypto. So they tend to be having a very meme-worthy presentation. Presentation is really good. Anyways, the highlights. They begin with the highlights. They've been able to achieve outstanding Bitcoin yield. Year to date, they are at plus 189% Bitcoin yield. So they've nearly tripled the Bitcoin since the beginning of the year. And actually, they've more than tripled because that was as of March. This presentation was as of March. So they've more than tripled now that Bitcoin, now that we know they've done 888 Bitcoin. Rapid execution, they exercised their former plan, moving strike warrant plan, in 60 days. And they just launched a new one. So now we're able to print cash to buy Bitcoin on these up days, on these limit up days on the Japanese market. They've raised 93 billion yen. Very successful they have been in raising Bitcoin with the plan, and with the updated plan, they're going to do that. And by the way, the plan they dropped today, the moving strike warrant plan they dropped today, they're going to have to do another one of those if they want to reach 200,000 Bitcoin. And I assume it will be announced sometime in 2026, maybe late 2025. Their target, their bold target, end of 2026, full year 2026, they want to have 100,000 Bitcoin. Keep in mind, this was 21,000 Bitcoin. The prior guidance was 21,000 Bitcoin. They've updated that to 100,000 Bitcoin. So they 5x'd the guidance that they had previously given us. And by year end 2027, they want to have 210,000 Bitcoin, own 1% of all of the Bitcoin, join the 1% club. In my view, this is more than feasible. Japan is a huge economy, you know, the third or the second or the fourth, depending on how you rank it, but it's a huge economy. It's more than possible that they have their own Bitcoin treasury company who owns 1% of the network. I believe that goal is feasible. They have enough authorized shares in order to do that, although they might have to increase that down the road again, maybe in 2027, because that 555 million plan coincides with the moving strike warrant plan, that plan that was announced today, along with the long-term target. So they're gonna have to do more things in 2026, more updates coming in 2026 in order to achieve that $210,000 Bitcoin goal. And the target, as you see, they want 30,000 by year end 25. So that's almost a 4x. Then they want 100,000 Bitcoin by year end 26, then 210,000 by year end 2027. This presentation is really good. They give us the time to double. How quickly are they able to double their Bitcoin bag? And of course, over time, that's going to take longer, right? That's the situation MicroStrategy is in. MicroStrategy takes them about, I would say between 21 and 25 months. It would take MicroStrategy to double the bag because they have a huge bag. They have 580,000 Bitcoin. For MetaPlanet, smaller company, they're able to double the bag right right now in 62 days. They're able to double the number of Bitcoin in the balance sheet. And when you double at set periods, what do you get? You get an exponential curve. And this is uncanny how it follows that exponential. It literally follows exactly the exponential curve. They've been able to double the Bitcoin quickly thanks to the higher price to NAV. I love this slide that they included. We always talk about dilution and say dilution is bad, dilution is bad, dilution is bad. I was reading about Cooler today, a video in mainstream media, and everybody was like, oh, he dilutes shareholders to buy Bitcoin. Like, people still don't get that dilution is amazing when it comes to buying Bitcoin. And I mean, this is the starkest example. They only diluted the shareholder by 233%. Only diluted the shareholder by 233%, but they grew the Bitcoin by 6,200. So granted, this is small numbers, right? So we're not gonna that delta is going to greatly reduce. But I have no issue imagining a company like MetaPlanet growing the Bitcoin bag by 1,000% with only a 200 or 300% dilution. So if you increase your number of shares by say 300%, but you increase your Bitcoin holding from 888 to, I don't know, 88,000, you increase it by 1,000%. Yeah, so plus 300%, plus 1,000%, you accrete 700%. The key is the dilution is much smaller than your ability to grow the Bitcoin. And this is because of a price to NAV. This is the whole point that seller has always made, is when you sell, when you have a price of NAV of 3, you're selling $1 for $3 in the open market. And so I think it's a pretty genius thing. Dilution, I always welcome dilution in my Bitcoin treasury stocks. Anyways, the guidance this year, we're already there. I mean, we're 90, the guidance that was provided for this year is 97% accomplished, and we are 2/3 in Q2. We're 2/3 within Q2, and we're 97% there. And keep in mind that's only because they didn't have a moving strike warrant, acknowledged for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. So they've been sitting there, and unfortunately, you have to move at the speed of the regulator to get another one approved. So otherwise, we would have gone even faster. And that's why this time they went bold. So this time they're not gonna run out of moving strike warrants as fast as they did in the beginning of the year. And so they've already achieved their target, which was a pretty hefty target to begin with, because it was 230%. They've achieved 225% Bitcoin yield, so nearly a tripling of more. This is more than tripling of the bag where they're at right now. It's quite stunning. The capital raise announced today, along with the long-term target of 210,000 Bitcoin by 2027, they also announced the capital raise. This is Asia's largest ever public equity capital raise to buy Bitcoin at a $5.47 billion, or 770 billion yen. More than $5 billion. Keep in mind, this company right now is worth about 5.6 or 5.7 billion USD. 800 billion yen is about 5.6 or 5.7 billion USD. So they're essentially doubling the market cap in the amount that they're going to raise. They want to raise as much as their market cap, which is stunning, if you ask me. It's just stunning. And this is the official announcement. And another point here that I want to show is the MetaPlanet MNAV days to cover. So, of course, their MNAV is more than a 2, so it takes them longer to cover than the data that I presented right here when I said 62 days. Their MNAV is more than a 2. So how many days does it take them to actually grow into the MNAV, which is an MNAV of 6 right now? Well, historically, it's taken them 182 days of buying Bitcoin for the valuation to grow into the MNAV. In other words, for the MNAV to equal to 1 without the stock price going up takes about 182 days. So that's why the MNAV is so high, because this company accumulates Bitcoin so quickly. And when it comes to this chart right there, which I love very much, you can see how much Bitcoin they're able to accumulate based on the MNAV. And you can see that the higher the MNAV, the more they accumulate, right? So for these companies, it's counterintuitive. A company that looks, quote unquote, overvalued on a first look is actually a better company because it's able to grow much faster thanks to that, quote unquote, overvaluation. And you can see that by January 2026, if they stay at a 6x MNAV, they could see themselves accumulating 102,000 Bitcoin. However, if the MNAV drops to a 2, they could see themselves accumulating 22,000 Bitcoin, which is still higher than their prior guidance, by the way. But you can see the higher the MNAV, the more you are able to accumulate Bitcoin. And there are tools to acquire Bitcoin, and so of course this is the chart. This is the long-term chart and the correlation between the MNAV and the acquisition speed. And so the higher your MNAV above 1, the higher you're going to be able to accumulate. And you can see they chart it out, and they think they can achieve 210,000 Bitcoin. What I find more important and a nugget in that slide is this slide. And by the way, he presented that too at the Bitcoin 24 conference. But you can see that, just like MicroStrategy, MetaPlanet is going into a multi-pronged strategy that does more than just the ATM. They have their moving strike warrants. They've been selling some rights issue. They want to do ordinary bonds. They want to do convertible bonds. They want to do a preferred stock. They've done an ordinary bond already. They want to invest their operating income. The third-party share issuance, that's in conjunction with moving strike warrants. They have their own way to reach the capital markets, and it's going to be a diversified way. So they're going to be able to accumulate Bitcoin via convertible bonds and via preferred stock. And there's very few preferred stocks in Japan. It's a small market, and the CEO said in his presentation he believes that market could want the preferred stock very much so. So just like MicroStrategy, there will be more ways to earn yield than simply monetizing the price to NAV. The target, like I said, is 210,000 Bitcoin. So that's 1% of 21 million. And they want to be in what this thing called the 1% club. I think it's a pretty cool club. Beyond the slides, though, and this is what is the most important to me, is how high could this stock go? Is this an asymmetric bet? So, given the fact that they've underguided and over-delivered many times, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that they can do 210,000 Bitcoin by December in 2027. And I'm going to be like, okay, you're not sandbagging. Let's say that's the real target. They really want to do 210,000 Bitcoin by December in 2027 and not more. And of course, it's so hard to predict this because if Bitcoin goes way up, they're not going to be able to reach that target. If Bitcoin is just a sleeper and stays around 100,000, well, then maybe they can acquire a target. So it's all, there's so many moving parts in this model. But we're going to try to unpack that. So the Bitcoin 24 model, right, published by Michael Saylor, available on GitHub, that's where I use my Bitcoin price targets. And so according to Saylor, Bitcoin by the end of 2027 should be 210,000. Is it a coincidence? They want to have 210,000 Bitcoin when Saylor says Bitcoin is going to be worth about $210,000. And so you can see it's right here on the chart. If you look at the table, this is the output table of Bitcoin 24 model. You can see 0.21 million is the price of Bitcoin at year end 2027. At least that's the prediction of Saylor. And by the way, if you're interested in making longer term prediction, you can see all of Saylor's prediction. You can see in 2034 he thinks Bitcoin will be worth 1.7 million, and in 2040 he thinks Bitcoin will be worth 5 million, and in 2045, everything goes loose, he thinks it's worth $13 million. So these numbers, like I said, it's very tough to predict over the long run, but I do think 210,000 2 years and a half from now for Bitcoin, I think that's pretty reasonable. That's nowhere near the most bullish forecast out there. It's a Saylor-like forecast, a reasonable forecast. So 210,000 Bitcoin times 210,000 USD. That means they would have $44.1 billion worth of Bitcoin in 2.5 years. current market cap is 5.6 billion, and they want to have 44 billion. So if you make the crazy assumption that in 2027 the price to NAV of MetaPlanet will be 1, if you make that assumption, see how conservative I am. If you make that assumption, then that would be a 7.8x from here in 2.5 years, which is pretty crazy if you ask me, because yes, and I see it coming in the comment section, because this is always the thing that is said is, oh, they dilute, you're not taking into account dilution. Well, sure, they dilute, but the question is, how much are they going to dilute? So let's assume they do an 800x, and let's assume they dilute us by 150%. Well, that's still a 4 or 5x in 2.5 years. That's very hard to find, if you ask me. And then if you start assuming that they're going to be trading at a price to NAV, let's say a 2 or a 3, then that entirely cancels out the dilution, and then the return could be very well a 8x in 2.5 years on this one. So this is a stock that I could see perhaps reach $50 perhaps in the 2028. So this is quite outstanding, is all I'm going to say. And as much as I hate increasing the position in a stock that is up 27% today, I'm hoping for a drop like we had yesterday. I'll be monitoring the entry points. I think under $10 this stock, that could be a good entry point. I'm monitoring it. I want to increase my position. I just wish it was easier to buy, and you didn't need to have all of the settled funds and all that sort of stuff, and you could buy it in a modern broker. You have to go for like an old world broker. Anyways, I don't like the fees. There's a few things that I don't like. I want Robinhood to start listing this stock as Robinhood needs to start listing OTC. Anyways, I'm rambling now. So anyways, hopefully that was interesting to you. This was not financial advice, not investment advice. This is just entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.